In this module, we're going to be taking a look at some of the less commonly used editing tools, and they're all buried in this edit command toolbar. And we have some review here. We have drag, rotate, mirror. These are some things we've done already. Now we're going to start looking at, for example, the align. I don't use this very often, but I think that you should at least know that it's available so that when you need to do something like this, you know that it's at least possible. Now, so if I want to align, I can align all of these, for example, to the top, and it's taken all of these circles and align them to the top. I can undo those and I can align them to the left. I can align them all of the vertical centers. So this is a really nice way to take a bunch of elements and just clean them up very quickly. There's also Align Special, which will allow us to align to a line or an arc, and then we just select here, and it's going to basically bring everything down to that line. I don't use this very often, but I just wanted you to know that it's available. So now let's look at distribute. So distribute is similar to the align in that it's going to modify the position of many elements at the same time. But let's say we want to distribute along the X. So what it's done is it's taken the center points and made the distance between the centers all the same. So it's 7'1", measuring 7'1". So it's taken them, it's left the left element and the right element, and then just centered everything along the X axes. We can do that along the Y, and then we can do it from point to point. So it keeps the elements, the most extreme upper left and the lower right, and it makes the spacing in between all of those equal. So not something I use that often, but it is handy, and you should know it's there. We also have a special distribute. See what it does. It's going to distribute it, make all the spaces equal along that line I just drew. So that's the distribute command. So align and distribute. A couple of other things to take a look at. I'll delete these circles. And let's say I have a bunch of lines. And let's say I've accidentally drawn lines on top of each other, and that's a little sloppy. Let's say I have segments that are all making up the same line. If I select these and I go to reshape, unify, well, let's do line work consolidation. This will run me through a dialog box, ask me a bunch of questions, tell me what, it'll allow me to change everything to the same layer, change the same pen. If things are merged in, if they're collinear, it will line them up. If they're overlapping, it will take two lines and make it one. Basically just taking and cleaning up all your line work. And either you did maybe a little sloppy job with your drafting, or you imported a drawing and somebody else did a sloppy job. That's what this is for. So this is line work consolidation, and you'll see it gives you a little window of everything it did, and it cleaned this up and it got rid of, several different lines. So that's line work consolidation. Similarly, we haven't talked about fills too much, but fills are basically just polygons that have a closed region. We'll talk more about it, but I think it makes sense to look at the editing tool here. If I want to do fill consolidation, I have some choices here, read through and play with it. But basically it collapses all these fills, does a union, and makes one fill out of several. So that's fill consolidation. The other thing that you might want to use is the unify of the lines, and that's also under here, and that basically takes all those lines and turns them into something we really haven't talked about, which is a polyline. So we have line segments that are completely independent of one another, or we have a polyline, and the polyline, these are one line. I can move each of the nodes. I can add a node using this tool and continue to chain on. I can make it a closed region, and but this is one element. So a polyline is one element, even though it may contain multiple edges. And in this regard, it begins to work a little like a fill. If I use control, I can delete one of the edges, and then I have an open contour. So this is the polyline tool. I'm not a huge fan of polylines. One of the main reasons ArchiCAD introduced this idea of polylines is so that it could have a better data transfer between AutoCAD. And you'll have to decide. It is a little cleaner in some ways, but you'll find that when you have a mixture of lines and polylines, things become a little bit more challenging because I can't change the settings. I lied. I guess you can. Anyways, maybe I should use more polylines. It is a little cleaner. But that's a polyline versus a line. If I want to take multiple lines and turn them into a polyline, I just use that unify tool, reshape, unify. Notice that I can only have one line type within my polyline though. So if I do have multiple line types, they have to be independent line. The last one that I'll show you in this reshape is an explode into current view, and basically whatever the element is, it'll blow it up into lines and fills. And this is very useful. You can actually bring in PDFs and it'll explode them into actual vector geometry. If you have a block from AutoCAD and you want to explode that, a lot of different times you want to explode it into individual components. So that is the explode modifier. So that's most of the settings within, what am I trying to say? Who knows? Anyways, I think we covered several different ways to modify geometry that is a little bit more subtle and something that maybe you're not going to use as often, but that doesn't mean it's not very helpful in its time. And the next module, we're going to look at some other tools that are a little bit, even a little more sophisticated. And some of these you're going to use all the time. So see you there.